All right, well, here we are. Good morning to everyone. I'm Matt Line, and this is our second installment on dealing with frustrating people. So basically, you're going to get a chance to share some morning coffee with me or any other beverage of your choice. And we're going to have as many installments of this as we need in order to get through the topic with at least some semblance of being thorough. It's a little difficult, I'd say, in order to get through this topic because so many people are frustrating. And the people that frustrate us can be friends, family, co-workers. They can be acquaintances. They can be people that we barely know. And I think that part of dealing with frustrating people is learning to deal with frustration itself. There are many related elements, but I think that a lot of them have a lot to do with our own attitude. A lot of them have to do with our own attitude, and I don't quite know how to say anything other than we're not dictators. So we can't go and tell other people, well, you need to do this, you need to act like this, you need to say all these different things. You can certainly make recommendations for other people, but in the end, they're going to do what they're going to do, and you're going to do what you're going to do. And that means that the burden of changing your behavior is entirely on you or me, which is part of what makes it frustrating. The fact that we are the only people that we control, in one sense, is very empowering in that we have control over practically everything that we do. At least in the sense that we're talking about for this conversation. But then, in taking responsibility for our own attitude, that's not to say that we can ever take full responsibility for the circumstances we find ourselves in. There's way too much outside of the scope of our control to be able to actually go and say, hey, I know what's going on here. I know how to deal with frustrating people. I know how to fix the situation. I know how to make everything go the way I want it to go. And I would say that many people that wind up having problems with this, that are powerless, wind up going and becoming depressed and wind up doing things that are self-destructive and generally ruining one's own life. In the same vein, people that are more powerful tend to use that power for evil. People like that tend to use their power for evil, and that is just, well, not good. So how do we go and prevent ourselves from doing the evil thing, or doing the self-destructive thing, or what have you? Well, I would say that part of it has to do with keeping perspective. A very big part of it has to do with keeping perspective, because ultimately, Alright, there we are. I just went and put a little post on Gab and Twitter. So hopefully other people who are interested in the subject will be able to come and join in. In the meantime, I think that it's... There we go. In the meantime, I think that it's just going to be important for us to remain focused on our own attitude. And one of the biggest things is that we might have this idea, and I know that at least I've had this idea, probably from the fact that, at least for part of my life, dealing with frustrating people was the exception rather than the norm. Dealing with frustrating people was the exception rather than the norm. And that tended to make things a little more difficult. When it did come, it happened because I thought that somehow, things are going to have to be different. And, well, I guess I may have been misguided. Because as soon as you have an opinion, as soon as you have a goal, as soon as you have... Well, here, let me go get something. Alright, here is one thing that frustrates me. One big thing that frustrates me is when people don't respect my time and goals. If I'm setting out to do something, and then somehow people think that whatever it is that they're doing should be more important to me than whatever it is that I'm doing. Now, they don't go out straight out and say, I think that what I'm doing should be more important to you than what you are doing. No, they just go and they understand that, okay, what I'm doing is more important to me. And therefore, I just kind of gush from the mouth all these things that are relevant to me without any consideration as to whether or not it's actually relevant or helpful to other people. I think that comes from just basic immaturity and not understanding that the world in general does not revolve around one person. I mean, Nazi Germany doesn't... the lives of people in Nazi Germany didn't even revolve entirely around Hitler, although he did have a big influence. They... to some extent involved an awful lot more around for many people living hand to mouth. So people cared more. I mean, obviously, you care more about your own belly than you do anything else. For the most part, with few exceptions. Well, anyhow, going and saying that, so being a father and being married can be simultaneously a big, big reward and also one of the most frustrating things in the world. This is the 29th streaming of CSC that I've done, and I've also appeared on Caleb Beer's channel on numerous occasions. I've streamed pretty close to 40 times now, which I know in the grand scheme of things is nowhere near as many as some of the popular people on YouTube. But you would think that uh, after having lived with me for months, that, for instance, my wife would know my schedule and would understand that 45 minutes prior to the stream, uh, I need to be left alone to collect my thoughts and to prepare for what's going to be taking place. I had written my schedule down and put it up on the wall above our calendar. Well, that didn't work. Uh, I had attempted to write things down all over the place. That didn't work. I had told her on numerous occasions when I'm streaming, and that didn't work. In fact, it seems that just getting things done on time with her is difficult. She has a different way of viewing time and projects and so on as I do when they relate to something that she isn't um, herself participating in. I happen to be able to keep track of what's going on in her life and in my life and in the lives of a few dozen other people, to the point where I can go and ask these people a question. Well, how did that go? How did this go? How did that go? And they can be surprised at the fact that I remembered 3 months. They told me 3 months ago that something was going to happen today, and lo and behold, I asked a question about what happened today. Well, I guess I wind up having that same expectation of other people. They're like, well, I've gone out of my way to learn these facts about you that aren't relevant to me personally, and it hasn't been reciprocated. Does that mean I care about you more than you care about me? Maybe. Maybe not. Maybe it just reveals a different set of competencies and priorities. Or maybe people aren't conscientious. Maybe you just can't expect people to, straight out of the box without any kind of teaching or help or whatever, to be conscientious. I mean, if you look, last night I made this, and obviously this is due to the fact that the stream schedule is going to change. But since the stream schedule changed, I went and I wrote it out for my wife in color on an index card to put onto the refrigerator. So you'll be able to see that on Monday there is no stream. Tuesday through Friday we'll be streaming our time from 4 to 6 a.m. It may go on a little longer. And then on Sunday we'll be streaming from 9 p.m. to 12 a.m. my time, and so on. Then there are all these things penciled in as, okay, allow 45 minutes beforehand for prep time, allow 30 minutes after for if the stream goes late or something of that along those lines. This one being written this way and put on the refrigerator worked better than having one with no colors, or rather two colors, white and black, being put next to the calendar. Apparently being surrounded by kids occasionally gets to my wife to the point where it's difficult for her to know what day it is and what's going on, just because well, our kids are running us both ragged. So you wind up having all these additional stressors that go and and get in the way of other people doing what would be nice for you. And if you happen to be the kind of a person that is not so expressive, responsive in terms of your feelings, or is somehow able to go and put those aside and deal with the situation and then deal with your feelings, or if you somehow compartmentalize your life well, okay, my feelings are here, my actions are here, my thoughts are here, and you understand the implication that all these different elements have on each other, you're in a good position of being able to be who you need to be for yourself and for other people. But not everybody else is in that same position. And if people are in your life and you want what's good for them, well, then maybe teaching them that could conceivably help the situation. Could. So one of the big things is that you just need to be understanding that other people are struggling. And understanding the struggling of other people and somehow validating other people, at least letting them know that there's goodwill, letting them know that there is no animosity, and so on. These elements are crucially important. I cannot overstate the importance of these elements, because people respond better to friends than to foes. And they may not realize that they're being hostile. They may not realize that they're being irritating. They may not realize that they're being annoying. They may just be living with their head stuck so far up their rear end that they can't smell anything other than their own crap. And if you want to have a positive relationship with such people, it is your responsibility to act like an adult no matter how the other people act. And maybe a century ago it would have been easier because the societal expectations, at least in the West, were more in line with that. But nowadays, and probably for most of human history, I mean, the propensity toward having bad attitudes and so on, and the propensity toward navel gazing has always been a thing. It just so happens that now we have more time to ourselves, given the fact that most of us aren't tending a farm and having to bust our butts from dawn to dusk in order to live, in order to make a subsistence. So, in our pursuit of self-actualization and so on, we can wind up tripping over each other and making life difficult for each other and so on. So other people are struggling. And it becomes especially difficult to deal with struggling other people when you understand the other people's struggles. Some people say, oh, just being cognizant this other person is struggling, that'll help. Like, you have to be really stupid and naive to not understand that others are struggling. You really, really have to not have it together if that's what you think the situation is. Certainly their struggles might be less than yours. Certainly you might think, well, they should be able to deal with what's on their plate better because what they're going through is easier than what I'm going through, and that may very well be the case. But if you go and you look at it from the other perspective, if you have something difficult on your plate, people will inherently view you as stronger. People will inherently view you as having broader shoulders, a stronger back, and being more capable of doing the right thing regardless. And so you set yourself up as somebody that, even if he doesn't particularly like having crap shoveled down his back can take it. Also, if you can easily deal with the problems of others, if you living the other person's life could manage to deal with their problems, what would wind up happening is you would go and breeze through all these other parts of life that they're stuck in now. And then you would find yourself right back where you started being yourself, due to the fact that your own competency and your own ability and your own set of beliefs and abilities and so on would have eliminated the certain problems out of your life and put in the ones that already do plague you. What we get in life is contingent upon where we are, like our actual environment, and the attitude we bring to where we are. And if the other person had the exact same attitude about everything and the exact same responses to everything, that other person would cease to be themselves and would be you or me. So, realize that they're not you. I know I'm here just with a big O on my forehead being Captain Obvious, but realizing that not everybody is yourself, it can be, to some extent, very helpful, to another extent, very freeing. And then can help you be understanding of their struggles. In that, you know that in spite of the fact that you could deal with their problems better than they're dealing with them, they're doing the best they can. And if your friends or acquaintances or somehow wind up being in the same circles, well, then maybe they could use your understanding and your caring more than your scorn. Which is something that I found myself often doing, just lamenting the weakness of other people. Thinking, well, why can't these people get their act together? Why can't these people do what needs to be done? Why do these people go and have all these aspirations and goals and desires and so on, and then just sit around with their thumbs up their rear ends not doing anything? And then my natural conclusion is, well, these people are just, saying they're spewing hot air. I really don't want this. I'm just going to say that I want this and then make excuses as to why I don't get it. Well, maybe this other person is just struggling so much. Maybe this person is just so incapable of dealing with stress due to perhaps never having reflected on the subject, or never having grown up in a household where dealing with stress appropriately was taught. I mean, there are all sorts of explanations for why people could be it that don't revolve solely around them having a worse character than you or I have. And if all I'm doing is stating the obvious, well, I'm sorry. These just happen to be things that have been useful for me. And so I'm hoping that they might be useful for some of you. So seeing someone else's struggle, like even something so simple as making this schedule up for my wife, was entirely contingent upon being understanding of my wife and how visual she is, and how having all of this stuff surrounding our kids gets to her, that and the fact that she's used to processing things in such a way that with the finish calendar, with Monday as the first day and Sunday as the last day, I didn't even realize, but she would just go and take a glance at a calendar and then, it's you're doing this or that or the other thing on this or that or the other day. And so then she wound up thinking, well, okay, Monday I had streaming, and Tuesday I didn't, and things of that nature, due to the fact that she didn't have the schedule written this way, but rather she had it written such that Sunday was on the left. Okay, so these little things, especially when you're dealing with people that are into visual things and patterns, can make all the difference. Which means that perhaps she or anyone that may be causing frustration of any kind might have had what you're wanting from them articulated to them. You may have said something to them, and then you're wondering, why in the world is this person so incompetent or uncaring? Like there's two explanations, two basic explanations. If the person understood what you're saying, then that means that either A, they don't care enough to do something nice by you, or, well, basically they don't care enough. Something else is taking precedence over them caring about what matters to you. Now, what that might be is anybody's guess, but then there also exists that other possibility that it doesn't matter to them so very little, or rather they're so overwhelmed with their own stuff, that even these little requests that you make go unheeded, due to the fact that there wasn't some sort of clarity, or that there's some sort of emotional baggage going along with these things, than than you thought, or than anybody thought, perhaps. Which can be frustrating, right? It can be very, very difficult, because you would think, well, this is just so simple. Why can't people leave me alone from 8:15 in the evening onward? It's like, this is nothing new. The schedule is nothing new. Why can't people just leave me alone? Why is it that there comes this deluge of stuff for tomorrow while I'm trying to get my head screwed on straight? Why does this deluge come to my neck 15 minutes before streaming? Why does if we use another context, why is it literally crap that happens at just the wrong time? Because I'm working from home, so when I'm programming something, or writing something, or doing something, why is it that unless I can find a way of completely isolating myself from everyone and everything, somehow people find a way of bothering me? Somehow people find a way of talking. Well, my wife, being an introvert, doesn't require stimulus in the same way that an extrovert would, but she's still a woman. She's still expressive, responsive. And if she sees a face, she'll talk to that face, especially if that face is a trustworthy face. So the fact that she's talking to me is more indicative of the fact that she trusts me, and less indicative of this, that she's out to sabotage whatever plan I have. So clearly stating these expectations and assuming goodwill simultaneously, even when things are blowing up in your face, even when you're having projects that are taking 3 and 4 times as long as you would like them to take, due to the fact that you're constantly getting interrupted, even in spite of all of it, don't assume ill will. Just assume someone could be struggling, and somebody could be so living in a different frame of reference that they might not be able to be to you who you need them to be unless you somehow train them. Now, my life has, compared to the lives of pretty much everybody for the whole history of the world, been great. I have no real reason to complain. So just know that I'm saying this to bring some context to my statements. I wound up going to college when I was 11 years old. So doing things and getting things done in that context was easy. It was easy. There were clear expectations, and you just go and you do what is expected of you, and then you get the grade and you move on. Working in that paradigm, in spite of the fact that I hate school, was relatively easy for me. I wanted to go to college earlier, and I wound up begging my mom for 3 years to give me permission, and ultimately it was a situation that was completely out of my control that caused her to relent, let me take the ACT and apply. But I pushed, and once I wound up getting into college, it was simply a question of find what it is you're aiming for, and go for it. And people in that context are kind of understanding. You want to do an independent study dissecting the human head and neck? Sure. All you have to do is convince a teacher to let you into the gross anatomy lab first thing in the morning, and you're ready to go. You want to attend a teacher's office hours? Well, then attend the teacher's office hours. You want to do all these different things. You just go out and you get it. You're in situation A, you want to be in situation B, you go there. Boom, done. Well, then when you enter the world where things aren't quite so cut and dry, and it's quite unfortunate the world of business is that way too. You wind up having to deal with people's emotions there too, and you have to wind up dealing with a whole bunch of people with inferiority complexes and superiority complexes, and people that think they know everything when they actually don't know anything, and that can also be frustrating. And then we can have expectations that people actually take seriously the words that come out of our mouths, and they don't. Very few people are auditory in the way that they gather information. Most people are visual, and so that means you need to speak the language that most people speak, which means that you need to take a lot longer communicating your message and repeat it an awful lot more than you'd like in order to have it go through. And the first part of the message always needs to be something emotionally validating. You don't have to agree with how the other person's feeling. You can think, this is the dumbest thing. Why in the world would they be struggling with this? Why in the world would they be having this particular emotion at this particular time? Why wouldn't they just suck it up and do what's in front of them? Well, most people are weak. Most people are weak. So if we take if we take that into account and don't treat people with contempt, but just understand that that's a part of life. People are weak. And you need to hold their hand. Most people, you need to hold their hand. Even the most competent. There are very few people that don't require hand-holding to some extent. There are very few people that don't respond positively to having stimuli presented in certain ways. So the onus is on us. The onus is always on us. Because likely we have a completely different set of expectations. We have a completely different set of goals, a completely different set of values. Otherwise, other people would already be behaving in accordance therewith. And so it's up to us to patiently communicate and to patiently teach and to be understanding. Now, I know I've belabored this point for nearly 40 minutes, but it's important. It is supremely important. Because if you don't get that, you will be frustrated for the rest of your life. What does a marketing firm do? What does a marketing department do? Okay, image matters. For people who are predominantly thinking-oriented individuals, image might matter less, or almost not at all, compared to what it means to other people. But if you have people that are generally living on autopilot, and you have something that you need for them to do, you need to lay it out in such a way that you take them by the hand and you gently lead them, or you put your hand into the small of their back and you gently lead them. If you aren't gentle, people will get reactionary. And simultaneously, if they don't agree with what you're saying, if it's not coming from them, they will be reactionary. They will sabotage you. They will mess with you. They will ruin things for you if it's not coming from a position where they think that they're the ones that are making the choices. And so, choking up bile as I may be doing, due to the fact that this all seems to be completely superfluous and unnecessary, I'm here saying that if you want anything in life, you have to be willing to market. You have to be willing not only to tell the truth, but to go out of your way to do it in such a way as to make it accessible. And when you think that you've told the truth enough, repeat it more. The sad reality is, very few of us will be able to accomplish even a fraction of what we set out to do in life. The other thing is our reputation precedes us. Our reputation precedes us. So that means that in spite of the fact that our ideas should be judged based upon the merit of the idea, people don't do that. That is a load of horse rubbish. That does not work. People judge you based on how you make them feel. People will either trust or not trust you based on how you make them feel. So, dress accordingly, act accordingly, be the person that deserves what you're going for. Be the person that deserves someone's trust. Be the person that deserves someone's respect. I don't make the rules, I just report them. And this is being the person that deserves respect is a very good thing. That really, really helps. But some of the things are really silly. Okay, why do people respect someone in uniform more? Why do people respect someone in a three-piece suit more? Why do people respect someone who is not slovenly more? Why do people respect someone who is articulate more? Why do people respect someone with a low voice more? Why do people respect someone who can communicate with pictures more? Why do people respect all these different things? Well, it's because That is the way that humanity is wired. It's very, very easy to hijack other human beings and get them to do things, and evil people do this all the time, largely with impunity and largely under the radar, because the people that actually do see what's going on aren't necessarily in a position of being able to stop it because it is so powerful. So ultimately, if you have goodwill, in spite of the fact that this whole seeking after power thing is exhausting and stupid and seemingly superfluous, it's a necessary part of your existence. It is a necessary part of your existence. And I'm not saying that you would use that power to be abusive or nasty to other people either. Like, you may have very, very bad examples of power being misused. In fact, that's generally what people tend to think about when they think of power, when looking at history and so on, is, oh boy, look at this person who went and said these things and did these things. I don't want to be that way. Therefore, I'm going to hope that other people go and rely on their reason to come to the same conclusions that I have, and to do the things I want them to do. Because what I'm suggesting is reasonable. Well, maybe 5% of the population will agree with you. Maybe 5% of the population will agree with you. And that's if you market your stuff a little bit. You can't expect that out of everyone. And you will be met with frustration at every turn if you don't go into life expecting that you're going to need to do something different in order to communicate your expectations to people who are just going through life, struggling with their own things, and incapable, unwilling, somewhere on that spectrum, to really extend too much extra effort and learn new things and improve themselves. So for those of us that might have frustrating parents, frustrating children, frustrating spouse, frustrating friends, frustrating coworkers, just recognize what is on your plate. Recognize what it is you need to communicate. And if at all possible, put a system together to do it. If at all possible, put a system together to do it. Take a little bit of extra time in the beginning to make things clear, but try to do it in such a way as it doesn't waste your time all the time. Because there are only 24 hours in a day. So be creative, be clever, and be willing to learn from these scenarios. Personally, I'm way ahead of where I was a decade ago. I'm behind where I was a decade and a half ago. And I'm a little bit ahead of where I was half a year ago. I was way, way, way better at communicating in my early teens than I was in my late teens, because I just kind of started getting different expectations of people. It's like, okay, in my early teens, I can go and be this energetic, fun, I can go and put myself out there and make things fun. I can go and make things enjoyable. I can go and approach these situations with the general understanding that people might just be caring but misguided, or not have ill will. What wound up actually happening was, I did that for so long, then I thought, well, okay, I'm out of college now. I'm dealing with real adults. I'm dealing with people that actually have their stuff together. I shouldn't need to act this way anymore. I should be able to just say what I need to say and have them respond according to the factual statements that I'm making. Don't do that. learn from my mistake. It doesn't work that way. People respond the same way to stimuli when they're preschoolers as they do when they're old farts and everywhere in between. That's a rule with very few exceptions. And so that's why the people that are aware of this and are willing to change the way they engage with the world accordingly are going to get what they want. Whereas the people that actually expect people to be reasonable are going to drastically fall behind. And I owe being able to articulate that point and being able to discuss that point at all a great deal of credit to a dear friend of mine who will remain anonymous due to the fact that I don't know that he would appreciate having his name being mentioned on a stream. Which is interesting because that shines a light on an emotional blind spot that I have, which namely is the emotional connection to reason, as opposed to the emotional connection to emotion. Right? I like things that make sense so much that I can't conceive of other people making decisions on any other basis. And that gives me a blind spot. And that blind spot has been the cause of all sorts of frustration. It's not that I think I'm better than anybody else, as many people might accuse me of thinking. But it's that I have an attachment to my way of doing things. And I expect that other people would have the same respect for and attachment to that way of doing things as a function of them being a responsible adult who's supposedly a productive member of society. Now that we are in a comfortable world, we can more afford to divorce ourselves from facts, because divorcing ourselves from facts isn't going to immediately stop us from having food on our plate. So I'm going to go and see if anybody said anything in the chat. No one has said anything yet, but if you guys are interested in participating, or if you think that I've missed something, I'm completely down to hearing from you guys, and I'd love to hear what you have to say. Well, in the meantime, I'm thinking, and that's actually part of the reason that I've been taking up more of artistic expression. And yeah, I actually am about ready to burst into tears at this point, which that's what this particular facial expression means. It means I'm trying to hide an emotional outburst because I don't think that is appropriate to the occasion. You know, I'm supposed to be here. I'm supposed to be communicating. I'm supposed to be here providing value for you, and well, the emotional implication of what I'm saying isn't necessarily, it's not a fact that's going to help you. Right? It's not a fact that's going to help anybody. Or maybe it is. What do you care about? What is it that you're aiming at? And what is it that gets in your way? the people that embody what gets in your way are going to be frustrating you. And interestingly, you, especially if you're, say, school aged, and a thinking type, are going to be accosted with this. You are going to be completely accosted with this. And you're going to have to figure something out. You're going to have to figure something out to get you through life. This idea that, oh, I can just go and isolate myself. Yeah, that would be lovely. I would love to be able to isolate myself from the world too. I really would. Uh, but there are other implications, and that means that we have to develop ourselves in very different ways than other people might have to develop themselves in order to get the results that we want out of life. Indeed, for people who are scientists or mathematicians, people that have that particular mindset, one immensely important thing is marketing your stuff is probably more important for you than it is anybody else. Because at bare minimum, what other people are giving is something of tangible value. And if you're not giving something of tangible value and you're actually trying to do something, well then, rethink your life and start doing things that are valuable, as opposed to, not producing anything. But let's say you want to engage in scientific exploration. Things that don't produce tangible benefit as the very next step. Things that are further forward thinking. Things that allow us to get a better grasp and perhaps contextualize things that are good for society, or just things that are good for knowledge's own sake. Which I don't actually particularly appreciate knowledge for its own sake. I mean, I like it, but I don't have